I've never shared this story with anyone. I was always too afraid to be judged for it, so it's something I buried deep down until my friend brought it up the other day. We both have daughters now, and we're talking about how we could educate them on being safe when they're teenagers and start experimenting with partying. When my best friend and I were 17 years old, we went to the beach for spring break with a couple of our guy friends. My friend was talking to this guy that she had met through mutual friends, and he wanted us to meet up with him at a house that he and his friends had rented together. Our guy friends had ditched us to meet girls, so we decided to go ahead and go to her friend's house to hang out with them. When we got there, it was still the middle of the day, and we were taken inside and introduced to everyone. It turns out that almost all the guys were on a basketball team of the same university. We all hung out, and they were all drinking. But my friend and I were not. One guy came out with 2 glasses of what appeared to be whiskey and coke. Against my better judgment, I started to sip it, as did my friend. There was one guy who appeared to be not athletic, and he was the only person at the house who was not being friendly toward us. I'll call him Mike. Suddenly I started to feel very buzzed. We were laughing and talking, and one guy asked me to put on his jersey. I grabbed it and I put it on over my clothes. "No, take your clothes off and put it on," he said in an aggressive tone. I was feeling more tipsy at this point, and I knew something was wrong. Our parents had let us drink with them multiple times, so I knew what it was like to be drunk. I knew how much I could handle before I was drunk. And one drink never made me feel like I was getting wasted. "Hey, quit babysitting that drink. Drink up, weakling," one guy said as they all laughed. Even though I had stopped drinking, I still kept feeling more and more buzzed, especially since our drink barely tasted of any whiskey. My dad always had whiskey at home, and we would drink a couple whiskey Pepsis on occasion. I would feel relaxed, but this was much different. "We should go. Our friends are waiting for us," I said, as I headed to the door and a couple of guys stood in front of us. No, not so fast, you can't leave. Come sit down over here for a little bit," as they ushered us back to the couch. This sinking feeling hit my gut, and I just knew that we were on borrowed time. Trying to stay calm, I laughed and said, "I need to pee. Come with me," as I grabbed my friend's hand and we went into the restroom together. We both stood there, and we had already read each other's minds. I put my hands on her head and looked her in the eyes so we could both focus. "We need to leave right now," I said. Our phones both had spotty service, and I'm guessing because there were so many people packed on it. "Take my keys. Tell them you are going to get your purse, and I'll stay here. You go get the guys and come back for me." I knew this plan probably wouldn't work, but my mind was going crazy, and we had to try something. As I opened the bathroom door, Mike was standing there, and my heart sank. He was rude to us earlier, and he probably heard us talking. "Hey, follow me and be quiet." Something inside me trusted him with everything I had in that moment. We followed him down the hallway to a garage and out to the front driveway. "Hurry up, get out of here now." We ran to the car and I drove off to our hotel. I remember driving, but I don't remember getting to our condo. The rest of the story is from our guy friends telling us what happened. Apparently, we walked into them and the guys asked us where we had been because it was already nighttime and we were supposed to meet up to barbecue some hot dogs. They said we didn't say a word and that we just walked to our room and closed the door and passed out. We didn't come until the next day, and both of us had excruciating headaches, as if we had drunk a whole bottle of cheap vodka by ourselves. And thank you, Mike. I wish I could thank you. I hope you're out there hearing this and you remember the brunette and blonde little girls that you saved that day on the island. I'm not going to lie. I basically went to college to smoke weed and go to parties. My full intention was to do just enough to get by while partying as much as I could. Unfortunately though, for me, I only applied to a few schools, and I was only accepted to one. A small college in the mountains of New Hampshire. It was very small, around 3,500 total undergrads, and I went not knowing anybody. On the first day, as I was skipping the ice-breaking games, and other students were giving tours of the campus to their families before leaving, I wandered down a small path behind the cafeteria toward a small stream that I had noticed during the drive-in. I lit a joint and I was just meandering around when I noticed another dude a little further down the stream that cut a straightish path through the trees. He was also smoking a joint. I assumed, at least, by the way he was holding it. so I made my way over to see if I had just made my first college friend and introduce myself. His name was Nate, and he seemed pretty cool, and he was smoking some really nice herbs, so I figured I could get along with him. He only stood at about 5'5", and he was also a little stubby, but I remember noticing that he had a really weird laugh, like a nervous type, and that whenever he laughed, he'd kind of look off to the side, and then glance back at me from his peripheral vision. Yeah, I knew it was kind of weird back then, for being the first time I'd met him. Literally the first 30 seconds of introducing myself, but I just thought maybe he was socially awkward, had bad teeth, or who knows. I was taught to not judge, and he was otherwise normal. We ended up hanging out fairly frequently, playing video games, drinking, and smoking, but other people, especially in my dorm, didn't really seem to take to him. Not that I really felt a strong connection with him, I didn't. It was a very superficial friendship, built around drugs and debauchery, but I definitely got the sense that my other friends weren't comfortable around him. Then something weird happened that I've managed to successfully forget about until just very recently. My heart is pumping out of my chest just typing this. One weekend, my roommate was home for a visit, and Nate's roommate was having his girlfriend over, which basically implied in college terms that Nate was staying with me. Kinda just seemed automatic. We got trashed and smoked a ton, got pizza, and played video games. I was pretty out of it, and we were both sitting in desk chairs in my room, passing a bowl back and forth, when he handed the bowl to me, leaning toward me in his chair, put his hand over my hand, and casually, in a low, steady voice, said, "I'm going to fucking kill you." Okay, so like I said, we were all sorts of fucked up, but I was definitely freaked out a little. He'd never really been aggressive before, even at his most intoxicated. Certainly never said anything like this before. I've never handled confrontation very well, so all I said was, "Dude, don't do that, bro." And I sort of just laughed it off, and I tried to write it off as a drunk, stoned idiot playing too much Mortal Kombat. We had a bunk bed set up in the room since it was pretty small, and I was on the top. My roommate was a bigger guy and didn't want to have to climb down to pee in the middle of the night. We had both gone to bed, but my roommate had put up Christmas lights that we always kept on, strung along the ceiling. I'm half deaf, I should add, and when I sleep, I tend to roll into my functioning ear to block out sounds or maybe muffle them in the pillow. This also means that I'm a pretty heavy sleeper. But sometime during the night, I woke up, feeling a little nauseous and slowly opened my eyes. Nate was standing on the edge of the mattress, holding on to the side railings of my top bunk, and staring directly at my face as I was sleeping. My eyes grew wide as I snapped awake and sat up. "What the hell, dude?" I said, backing up and bumping my head on the wall behind me. Then he turned his head and gave me that look from the corners of his eyes, the same smile and laugh that freaked me out the first day I met him. He was still holding the railings, standing on the mattress from the lower bunk, with his face lit in weird splashes of color from the Christmas lights. He took one hand from the railing and put his finger to his mouth, while smiling and still looking at me sideways, and whispered, "Shh," before hopping down and leaving the room. It was like 3 a.m. and I don't know where he went that night. I never told anyone about that, and I pretty much did my best to bury it and never think about it again. I avoided Nate for the rest of the year, making up excuses when he wanted to chill alone, but I did end up at the same parties with him a few times. We never talked about it though, he never brought it up. I transferred to another school the following year, not because of Nate or anything, just financial reasons, and I did manage to forget about that weird incident. But that was 15 years ago. I'm 33 now, and recently got a call from my old roommate from the school in New Hampshire, who luckily remembered my very repetitive phone number. I actually made a song out of it that's really easy to remember, and I've never changed the number. Man, remember that guy Nate that you used to hang out with at the dorms? He killed his 2 friends with a hunting knife and fishing line on a camping trip a year ago. He said he was too screwed up to control himself, supposedly, and he was mixing his meds with booze and drugs, and they said he just lost it. The thing that messes with me is wondering if he told them he was going to kill them like he did me, and that the last thing they saw was that sideways smile that I saw when I woke up that night. In the fall of 2010, I decided to go back to college. I was a single mom of 3 boys, but they were all in school now, and me going back was finally possible. The school I went to was a regional campus to a very large university, and located in a neighborhood that is known for crime, meth, heroin, and prostitution, etc., but it was only a 20-minute drive from my home, and I didn't really feel unsafe going there. The first day in first class was intimidating. I didn't know anyone, and I was a lot older than most of the students. I was 28 at the time. I sat down in the back of the room at a table, and a few minutes later, a lady who was around my age sat next to me. She was very skinny and smelled like cigarettes, and even had greasy hair and sunken eyes, but she started to talk to me, and she seemed normal enough. She started off the conversation telling me that she chose to sit next to me because I was wearing the prettiest blouse in the room. Kinda strange, but as an awkward person myself, I leave a lot of leeway for people to say or do awkward things before I think too deeply into it. She didn't have a backpack, any books, a pen, or a notebook. Nothing. She said her financial aid hadn't come through yet, but she didn't want to fall behind on classes and asked if she could share my book. I agreed, and I even gave her a pen and paper also. After the first class, she asked if I would mind going to the library with her so she can scan some of the pages to take home. I agreed, and we started to head to the library. But on the way there, she stops and looks at her phone and says her son just texted her that she needs to come home to do something. She asks if I'll come with her, but I tell her I have another class shortly and I can't go. I asked her if she still wanted to go to the library first, and she said no, that she had to go to her son now, but she can't go alone. I kept telling her that I can't go with her, and then she started crying. At this point, we were in a common area outside. I was heading toward the library, while I assumed she was walking to the parking lot. I told her I needed to go to the library, and she's welcome to come, talk, or whatever she needs, but I have to go. I didn't like being outside away from people with this woman anymore, and I was trying to get back to a busier area. She gets really upset and starts screaming. Basically says fuck you to me. I can't remember how the interaction went exactly because I was frozen in confusion by how quickly she transitioned from friendly, then to crying and scared, and to now screaming in my face a slew of hateful, angry things. I turned around to start walking to the library, and I called my friend so that I would have someone aware if this lady tried anything more than just screaming. I get to the library and I start to watch her through the glass doors. She's standing in the middle of a parking lot, and a car pulls up with a man in it, and he was very obviously upset with the woman. They looked like they were arguing, but I couldn't hear them from the inside. Eventually, she gets in the car and leaves with him. The next day, I was dreading class because I didn't know what this woman's attitude would be that day. But she wasn't there the next day, and in the end, she never came back. I didn't know her name, or at the time how to look at a class roster, but looking back, I'm fairly certain she was not enrolled at the school at all, and for whatever reason was trying to get me to leave with her. I wish I knew her intentions, but at the same time, I'm glad I never had to find out. This story happened almost 11 years ago, late summer 2006. I was an 18-year-old freshman in college. I went to a tiny college at the opposite end of the state. I lived in the basement and ground floor of an old dorm. My floor was men only, but the floors above us were women, and then the other side of the dorm was all men. I have some stories that are sort of creepy, but this one takes the cake, and at the time it didn't really click as that creepy, but hindsight is 2020. I was young, naive, and full of, I was in the best shape of my life at 6'2", 180 pounds, and handsome, etc. I'm 10 years older now, though, and I've put on 100 plus pounds. I was a young, good-looking college guy. In my dorm, there was a communal bathroom for all 20 guys to share. 2 stalls, 2 urinals, and 2 showers. That was it. One of the showers had an air vent that was about 7 feet up, but on the outside, it came out on the ground level. Well, one hot summer day, I'm taking a shower and just talking and joking with the guy in the next shower behind me. And all of a sudden, I hear someone else talking to me. I think that maybe someone has come into the bathroom and wants to use a shower or something. That thought quickly leaves my head as I realize that the air vent has been opened, and the dorm's maintenance man and janitor is now looking at me through the vent. This guy was 50 years old easily and looked like the actor Clint Howard, the ugly redneck guy in a lot of Adam Sandler's 90s comedies, and he had a thick Appalachian accent. He somehow knew my name. I don't remember ever giving it to him, but I have said hello to him a few times. He was also trying to make small talk. It was very weird. I was weirded out by the college janitor peeping on me and then trying to start a conversation while I was showering. but for some reason at the time, it didn't really register that what he was doing was super creepy and illegal. I just thought he was being weird, and I politely asked him to close the vent. The guy in the shower next to me told me that the janitor did that all the time, and he thought it was weird and creepy too, but harmless. I guess it was a huge joke that the best time to shower was later at night, until the perverted janitor tried watching and started making a conversation. It was apparently a common occurrence on my floor. My floor is mostly made up of the freshman football players. I was not one of them, and I guess the janitor liked to talk to these guys about the team and football through the air vent while watching them. I still shudder at that thought. I would see the janitor occasionally around the dorm after that, but I never experienced him spying on me again, thankfully. I also never told the resident life or college administration about the janitor doing these creepy things. I hope maybe someone spoke up one day and maybe he was fired, but who knows. I'm an 18-year-old female and I've been stalked quite a few times in my life, but thankfully most of the perpetrators were more annoying than scary. Though these two individuals never got to bloom into full stalkers due to the fact that I moved out of state, they were easily the creepiest individuals I'd ever met. I'd begun attending community college, and in an effort to make friends, I joined an anime club. Once a month, we'd scrape together enough money for pizza and soda, and reserve a room in the library, then spend the day watching everyone's favorites. Everything was great until the second meeting. We watched Princess Mononoke and Kiki's Delivery Service, and some other similar movies. Then Chad put in the last movie of the day. It was an animated softcore erotic video. None of us knew what to do. We were all kind of socially awkward. He sat through our movies quietly and politely, so were we supposed to do the same? We spent the hour and 20 minutes red-faced and casting each other horrified looks, while Chad watched the disgusting lewd video with wicked attention. Finally it was over, and then he turned around. "So what did you guys think?" he asked. He was looking directly at me, and that was the first time I noticed that I was the only female in the anime club. Trying to be polite though, I made a huge mistake. It was, interesting. I meant it to convey his choice was interesting, considering that we'd all brought in Disney movies. But he took it to mean I was fascinated with what he played for us. From that day on, he showed up everywhere I went on campus. The second I entered any sort of common room, there he was with his laptop, trying to show me more of these videos, seating himself way too close to me so we could both lean into his screen and watch it. Each time I would tell him, "I don't really like this show," as politely as I could, and move to another table. But he would move right back uncomfortably close to me and assure me that I would get into the story if I just watched. One day he sat next to me and he pulls out a notebook and showed me a drawing. It looked like a creepy robot uterus, but hoping I'm wrong, I asked what it is. And it was a creepy robot uterus. He was writing a book about an AI sex toy that invades lady parts and turns them into ravening sex fiends, willing to do anything for the D. He wants my opinions on his story, and I told him it wasn't really my kind of story, and I tried to move again. But he followed and just kept asking really inappropriate questions in the name of research. Thankfully at this point, Vincent, the boy who'd brought me into the anime club, noticed that Chad was following me table by table through the lunchroom, as my face was always red with embarrassment, and he came over. Chad actually fled before he even spoke. It sort of seemed like Chad was afraid of Vincent, and thank God for that. Vincent was awesome and always in the lunchroom. All I had to do was just hang out near his anti-Chad force field. Vincent played World of Darkness with his friends in the lunchroom, and I had played all through high school. By proximity, I was eventually asked to join the game. I met with the storyteller, Paul, and gave him my character sheet. He informed me that I could keep whatever stats I had, but I was going to be taking over the role of Jenny, a long-standing NPC. I asked who Jenny was, but was only told I'd get a huge kick out of it. So I attended, waiting for him to introduce me to the team. They were playing the game in a seedy strip club setting. Everyone looked bored but Paul and a player named Bill. I didn't know Bill, but he was huge and creepy with an intense, unblinking stare that was always focused either on Paul or me. I started to get a bad feeling. Then Paul announces that Jenny the hooker has arrived to service Bill's character. He turns right to me and grins lewdly. Bill's searing focus locks onto me. Paul eventually relents, sulking. I finished that game and showed up for one more, but Paul insisted on sexualizing my character, and Bill just sat there across from me both games, breathing heavily and glaring. I quit the game, but Bill started following me. He never really spoke to me, just sat across the room from me, glaring and snorting, with Chad. They were friends. Of course they were. I had to abandon the cafeteria entirely, because while Chad was creepy, I was pretty sure Bill was dangerous, and he wasn't afraid of Vincent. Also, it really looked like Chad was encouraging him to do something while they stared at me whispering. I left the state at the end of the semester, but I kept in touch with Vincent. About 7 years later, I married him. When I brought up all the crazy things that happened back when we met, he told me that actually everyone was afraid of Bill, particularly Paul. They tried to disband the game because all Bill wanted to do was rent fake hookers, but he made veiled threats that he might do something insane if they stopped playing with him. To this day, I think Paul was offering me to Bill, the same way you offer the crazy guy at the office a Snickers, just in the off chance that if he does do something drastic, he won't do it to you.